evening, Russ Anber.
How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Good. Is that working better now?
Well, I think so. I think we're in now.
All right, perfect.
So, where do we begin? You have 30 years experience as a 35 years experience as a boxing coach.
Good. I was about to correct you. Yeah. When you got this many, you got to remember them all.
So you're a boxing coach, a manager, an analyst, a pundit. Have I missed anything out?
No, cut man.
Cut man.
I have Rival Boxing Gear, which I manufacture, design, and sell boxing equipment. So pretty much everything I do, Ingram, is based somehow or is connected one way or another to the world of boxing. So and I've been doing this since I'm 15 years old, and it's been my life. I had a dream when I was a kid that this is what I wanted to do in one aspect or another, and I've succeeded in doing it in many aspects and at a very high level. So I'm very proud of that.
So, for the fans, for boxing fans, let me know a little bit more about you. So, are you Canadian?
Yes, I am. Born and bred.
I did do some research and.
Yeah, born and bred. Born in Montreal, home of the world famous Montreal Canadiens. I'm sure you've heard of them. So, no. Okay. Anybody listening in North America will. Don't worry about it.
My apologies. Don't shoot me back to Canada. Okay, so tell us. I mean, how did you? I know you said you're 15 years old. You got into it, but what is it? How did you box yourself?
Yeah, I boxed for 3 years as an amateur, although probably nothing to any great degree. But my love affair with the sport, my first contact with boxing came when I was about 10 years old, and my father would tell me stories of listening to Joe Louis fights on the radio, and that coincided with the first Ali Fraser fight. That's when I first, that fight was the fight which captivated the world, not just the boxing world. It went beyond the sport of boxing, and I don't think people today really can fathom the worldwide impact that fight had. Like, I don't think there's been, recent fights in our memory or of this generation that could compare to what the attraction was to that fight. And that was, it was bigger than the sports world itself. It went on beyond the world of boxing. And that was my first contact with the sport. But my first love affair with the sport began in 1976 when I was 15, and the Olympics were held here in Montreal. And at that time, we were fortunate enough to get exposed on a daily basis and with every fight, on American television, watching the American team that consisted of fighters like, Ray Leonard and Howard Davis and the Spink brothers and Leo Randolph. And we got to see the great Cubans like Teofilo Stevenson, etc. And, the fact that the fights were held here that the Olympics were held here in Montreal, that's when I realized that I wanted to do something. My life had to some way be connected to boxing. And that's when I built a quasi gym in my garage and put up a speedball and a heavy bag, and I would shadow box, and I put mirrors, and I trained myself and wanted to be a boxer, and I had a dream and would hit the heavy bag. And so I did that for 3 years, and before coming to Montreal. I grew up 50 miles north of the city, and then when I finished high school a couple of years later, I came to Montreal, and that's when I ran into a fighter named Vinny Curto, who was ranked in the top 10 in the world, who had fought in everybody from Rodrigo Valdez to Vito Antuofermo to Benny Briscoe, all these guys. And I met him, and he gave me the encouragement and the belief that I could be a boxing trainer. And it was as a result of him that I followed my dream, not so much as a fighter, but as a trainer. And what I often tell people is while many kids my age, had athletes that were their heroes, my heroes, had cotton swabs in their mouth and a towel slung over their shoulder. And those were the guys that I watched, and those were the guys that I studied. And that's the beginning of my career, and that's how I got involved in this game.
So you have a love for boxing. You decide to become a trainer. So where did you go in terms of training? Who was your mentor in terms of your, as an amateur trainer first?
Well, my first amateur trainer happened to be a school teacher of mine who I first told that I liked boxing to, and I up until that point I didn't have anybody who was working with me. I just basically was hitting the bag on my own and trying to figure out how this worked, and trying to read through magazines and books. And I bought books on how to train boxers, and I would try to learn through that. And when I expressed this interest to the teacher, he offered to stay after school and teach me how to box. And he was my first trainer. His name was Augie Santini. He was my trainer, and he was the guy who taught me my first, idea of boxing, of keeping my hands up, of doing things right, and proper training and shadow boxing and doing all the important things. And he did that for me after school of his own free time. And I don't think you'd find many people nowadays who would do that, but he took out from his time. And to this day, we stay in touch. To this day, every time somebody asks me, like you're asking me, I make sure to thank him for what he did, because not a lot of people would have done that, and he did. But the first person who became my mentor was Vinny Curto. Vinny Curto is another one who I'm still in touch with to this day. And
Wow.
and as a result of the success that I've had, every time he's on, he keeps referring to himself as my discoverer. He said, I discovered you when you were 18. No one cared. I discovered you, and he gives me that. And we're still friends. As a matter of fact, I'm going to see him next week when I go to LA. So we're still in touch. But Vinny Curto was the guy who gave me my start and made me believe that I could do this. And then this was at a time, remember, like when he accepted me and made me believe that I could be a great trainer, I was 18 years old, like I was a kid, and all the other trainers, none of them took me seriously. They said, who's this guy? What's he done? And he saw that I studied the sport, and I had a knack for it, and I understood how to explain things and how to teach, and I realized the importance of teaching, and he made me realize that as well. So Vinny's the guy that I owe this to in terms of being my mentor and the guy who gave me my start.
Wow. So when was it that you felt to yourself, I got this. This is me. This is definitely where I want to be in terms of your results, the things you were producing as a trainer, and the results from seeing from your fighters?
I think when I knew this was me was with Vinny. I knew that the way some people are gifted athletes and have a natural gift to be a great athlete, my gift was in the ability to transmit information, in the ability to break things down and analyze it and put it back together and get it back out to the student in a manner that they would understand it. And I think I've always thought, as time went on, I always thought that anything I would have chosen to do that I had a passion for, I would have been a successful teacher at. Had I succeeded to coach baseball, I would have been successful at that because I was a good baseball player. If it had been school, if I would have had a passion for teaching school, I would have been a good teacher. It just so happened that I was able to do this in the sport that I loved, which was boxing, and that was. I was fortunate enough that God gave me that natural gift to be able to communicate and transmit information in a way that people could understand it, grasp it, and become even better as a result of it. So I really knew that deep in my heart when I was really young, when I was 18. I knew I could do this. I knew I could be that kind of a coach. But I would say it was probably by the early 90s, 92, 93, when I started having real success with my pros after having been really successful with them in the amateurs, that I really said, I've arrived. That was my moment that I've arrived.
So you're saying to me that the amateurs you had stuck with you into the pro game?
Well, this is one of the things, Ingram, that I'm most proud of. Unfortunately, I never had, nor did I think I ever wanted, but I never had people backing me or had a bankroll where I could go out and buy fighters and recruit fighters or recruit Olympians or people who had already, already had 20 fights and were on the cusp of becoming great. I didn't have that luxury. And two of my heroes during the time when I started boxing one was Emmanuel Stewart, and the other was a gentleman who you may not know, but real boxing pundits may. I don't know. You may know him. I don't mean to say that just because of your age.
Okay.
But a gentleman named John Davenport.
Davenport worked with Lennox Lewis.
That's right. Well, I was the one who introduced Lennox to John Davenport.
John Davenport and Who was with John?
Harold Knight.
Harold Knight, yes.
Yes,
Of
sir.
course.
Well, Harold is still my friend. I've known Harold since 1981.
Paliados. The manager was.
Yeah. I know who you're talking about. But
yes.
I wasn't connected with him, but I was connected with John and with Harold Knight.
Right.
And I first met John early in my coaching career. It was 1981 when we first met. And one of the things that I wanted to always do was, like Emmanuel Stewart had done and like John Davenport had done, was to groom and develop the fighters from the grassroots, from day one in the gym. So virtually every fighter that I have had since then, I have trained and managed from day one in the gym. And I took Otis Grant to a world title. I had Howard Grant ranked in the world. I had Hercules Givelos ranked in the world. I had David Lemieux as the #1 contender, undefeated middleweight contender. All these guys I had taken from the ground up. Like I didn't recruit them. They weren't, this is what I had in the gym. This is what I had to work with. And I take a lot of pride in that. And that's sadly something that doesn't get recognized very much. But in my own heart, I know that I did something that there are probably only a handful of people on the planet Earth.
I've done that.
Which would mean the universe who can say that they've done that.
Well, I appreciate that. To work from grassroots level right through up to pro level and to produce a pro world champion, that's a hell of a lot.
It is.
That's a hell of a lot. And I respect that a hell of a lot because as a coach, I've spoken to you before, from producing them from grassroots level right the way through, people don't understand the transition, the challenges that you face, taking them from one level to the next level. They just come along and see the finished article. Oh, look, he's a great fighter. But hold on, you're all giving a pat on the back now. Where were you when he wouldn't practice throwing that jab properly, or slipping that left hook, or ducking and rolling and throwing that body shot, or waking him up to get up in the morning to do that run, or to get his diet in shape, or get himself into shape? Where were you then? You weren't there. You didn't care.
Or driving to venues for no money and driving 7 hours on the road to go and make $400 and not even sure you'd get paid because you were going in there to lose, but you surprised everybody and knocked the local favorite out, and you had to get out of there before the riot started, or staying in a shit hotel, with under terrible conditions. People don't realize what we do at that level, and I've done that with some very talented fighters who no one knew about at that time. But, later wow, he's a great fighter now. Well, he didn't just become a great fighter. And I like to think that there's some fighters that I had or have who wouldn't even be in boxing if it wasn't for me. Had they been with somebody else, they likely would have been discouraged or gotten beat and been out of boxing. And they don't realize what it takes. Another guy who's done that, and I have a lot of respect for, is Dan Birmingham, who works with Keith Thurman. And he worked with Winky Wright his whole career. JD's, who trained Deontay Wilder to an Olympic bronze medal, the last American medalist, and now is with him, throughout his entire undefeated career. People don't understand, how difficult it is to work, or with the hand that you're dealt, and you've got to make the best of it. And it's sometimes I think, boy, given the opportunity to have great fighters who are Olympians and medalists walk into my gym after they're already made, and then do a couple of rounds on the pads with them and wipe their sweat off, boy, I would look good too.
There are a few trainers that do that, though. They've got
Of course there are.
But he's a great trainer. Well, there's a few of them. There's a few knocking around today. He may have trained one very good fighter, and then everyone runs to this trainer because he's got maybe the pound for pound #1 or #2 in the world. Let's all get round this trainer because he's a great trainer. No, he's got one fighter he worked with since he's an amateur. That guy's turned pro, done great things as a pro. But hold on, that doesn't mean because he trained one good fighter, his style's going to work with every other fighter.
No, it doesn't, and that's a fact. And you know what? It's not so much that I criticize the trainers on this, because that's a path that they've chosen. And right now, I think I was fortunate enough to be able to choose and to do the path that I chose because I was so young and I had time in front of me to take a kid who was 11 years old, 9 years old, 12 years old, and develop him all the way up till he hit his 20s and was ready to turn pro, because I had time on my side. I was so young. right now, with the situation that I'm in now, being a family man, having my business, having a lot of things, it would be very, very difficult for me to continue to do that now, because to sacrifice the hours in the gym in order to do that, I was able to do that when I was young. I couldn't do that now. So I think that some trainers make the point, say, look, I can't do that. I'm gonna go the other route, and I'm gonna get the fighters that are made, or people are gonna come to me because of my knowledge and experience, which in a way, not directly, but is almost happening with me now, is that I'm garnishing more and more work now, being an advisor and being a cut man and wrapping hands, because people want to avail themselves of my experience and what I've done, and I don't have to necessarily put in the 6 days a week in the gym, training guy every day, month after month, year after year, in the hopes of getting a shot. So in a way, I've had to change my strategy a little bit as well. But the thing that I am proud of most is that I have been able to take fighters that I didn't handpick, that I had in the gym, and take them to a world title from a grassroots level. So I'm proud of that. It's a good feeling. Not many people have done that.
So this is something for the boxing journalists. When they come and talk to you about, this fighter is a great fighter, you must have spoken to those journalists beforehand, before the guy was going on the way up. How do you feel where some of those journalists may have ignored those fighters, and suddenly they're in the frame of fighting for a world title, and then they come and talk to you? How do you respond to that?
I see what you're getting at. Then that's the thing that I say, why I don't blame the trainers necessarily, but it's more the media who creates this image of greatness and adds this importance to certain people when they don't really recognize, and perhaps it's out of their own ignorance, because they don't do their homework, and they don't realize, or I don't know why. I don't know what their excuse is, because you have to think that people that are in the media, who are running boxing, who are putting boxing on television, you would think that they have to understand that this fighter did not just appear on their network. He had to have come
from somewhere. Someone must have trained him.
That's right. Somebody got him to this point where he's on your network, and yet you don't seem to give credit to that person. And it's as if we only select a few people and give them the they give them the banner, or they crown them as the ultimate trainer, and I'm not sure that that's always fair.
No, it isn't. It's certainly something where people talk about who's the best trainer in the world, and then you start, like, there are some trainers I look at that seem to be very good at training fighters to be very attacking, but got no defense. Mm-hmm. I thought personally, if you're going to look at a trainer, you have to look at how many world champions they've produced, and also the sort of styles that they have. I mean, there's one trainer at the moment, I'm not mentioning his name, who can only teach attack. And recently, all his fighters are getting knocked out. And they're wondering, well, how come your fighters are getting knocked out? Because recently now, these guys are coming up against guys who can punch, good counter punches, and these fighters are leaving themselves open to get countered.
Again, when you ask the question of who is the best trainer, and you base it on how many world champions you've produced, I think that in itself is a wrong analogy, and I think that's generally what people go by. And the fact is that that's not the measuring stick that should be used. I think if you wanted to do that, and I think we would eliminate a lot of people. I think that if we wanted to define what a great trainer is, how many people have you started from the grassroots and taken them to world contender status even? Let's just forget about winning a world title, but taken to world that you started, I think would eliminate a
lot of trainers. Absolutely. Yeah, because a lot of these fighters, they get knocked out, and then they go to the doctor, they go to this trainer or to that trainer, and they may already have been world champions before they got knocked out. So they were good fighters anyway.
Or maybe even left or changed trainers without getting knocked out, or just left for whatever reason.
Well, there you go. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's why I say, my heroes were John Davenport and Emmanuel. And Emmanuel, even later on, he had to change the way he did things. But there was a time when Emmanuel only worked with fighters that he developed, that he started, that worked in the Kronk gym with other people. And I think that's also important, that we shouldn't neglect the other people that Emmanuel was surrounded with at the Kronk gym at that time, so I think that's important. Harold Knight is a prime example of that. So there were people that surrounded him, where he trained fighters from the grassroots level all the way up. Now, as he went on, He was, of course, able to handpick the guys he worked with, and people came to him for his knowledge like the Klitschko's did. And, you give him credit for that because he certainly put in the time and proved that he could develop fighters. But to me, that's the measure of a great trainer. And if that's the measure you're using, to me, Emmanuel Stewart and John Davenport may be two of the greatest trainers that ever lived, in my opinion.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let's go on. Let's talk about Russ as a TV pundit, a boxing pundit. I think this is a very important point to really touch on, because you see more and more these guys with their suits and their ties giving us an opinion of who they think will win the fight. And it seems to be a common theme now that if they're a HBO fighter or a Showtime fighter, that they lean a bias towards their fighters. Why
Absolutely.
Why do you think this is?
I don't know, because I think what's happened now, and again, this is only my opinion, so I'm certainly not basing this on any numbers or facts, but it just seems right now that television controls boxing, plain and simple. Forget about what the promoters think they control or what a manager might think he controls. He doesn't control anything. Doesn't matter how good you are. It's who TV wants to put on, plain and simple as that. And they're the ones who control boxing. And as a result of the two primary networks being HBO and Showtime virtually in a war with each other right now, Showtime's going to tell you who they think are the best fighters in the world, and it's all the guys that they have under contract. And HBO is going to tell you who they think are the greatest fighters in the world, and that's theirs. They're both vying for they're both defending their own interests. And I think that might be a little bit unfair to the true boxing fan. And sadly, there are not enough television networks, if you will, to showcase other fighters who are great fighters. And what's happening now is, as a result of the domination of the two major networks being HBO and Showtime, we're also seeing a domination of promoters, and the world of boxing is shrinking to the point where you've got a dozen people who ultimately control the entire sport.
Okay, I'm gonna bring an example, or something I'm seeing a lot of in boxing as well. More like a guy has a record of 25-0, right?
Mm-hmm.
He knocks people out. You might not know who the fighters are even, but because you see him knock all these guys out, suddenly they're great. They're pound for pound greats. Yet they've not really been anybody of any note. And it seems to be a common thread through boxing now. You knock a few guys out, you're on television, you're great. I thought it was about fighting the best of the best. Hagler, Leonard, Hearns, Duran, Barkley. Those guys, yep. The best of the best, fought the best. Today, you have a record, you stay undefeated, you're the best. What?
Yeah, now that is something that has dramatically changed in boxing, from back in the day and in the era that you're mentioning as well. However, in defense of that, or to make for devil's advocate on this, I don't care who you are. If everybody could get 25-0 with 25 knockouts, then everybody would do it. But that doesn't happen. Not everybody runs 25-0 with 25 knockouts. So there is a certain amount of talent that you're seeing there that a guy's able to do that. Now, of course, it's with the advent of the internet and social media and the power that is created almost virtually overnight. It's almost like we're able to produce these stories and these heroes without them having to fight somebody. We can virtually do it overnight through Facebook, because you can get 5,000 friends, to tell you how great you are. And where in the past you actually had to beat somebody for people to take notice. And now, not so much. And now everyone seems content to be in their own little world. And I think one of the prime examples, and I don't know how much of this is happening in the UK, but I can assure you that it's something that's happening here in Canada, where in the last 10 years or so, I have seen where two Canadians are not fighting each other. And, for the fear of, not wanting to lose to that guy. And that's sad, because in the past, you had to get out of your own city, your own province, and your own country
you're the
before
best
taking
in your own area. Exactly. Well, we've got a perfect prime example in Britain. Barker, Macklin, Murray, Andy Lee. That's four already.
Yeah.
Middleweights already there. That won't fight one another. But funny enough, have all fought for world titles.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty crazy, isn't it? It's pretty crazy. I have to agree with you. I don't have the answer to that. Unfortunately, I don't. And the work that I do on television, because it would be so easy to sit back and criticize, and trust me, boxing makes it easy for you to criticize. You saw what happened in the Malik Scott fight. I mean,
Yes.
it doesn't do itself any favors, when it does that. And that's starting to become a trend now. Like so many places have come under criticism for their poor judging. So they've tried to clean up the judging a little bit, and now they've turned it over to the refereeing and said, okay, guy gets up. In my opinion, and I'll get back to the Malik Scott fight. I'm sorry, I digress, but
We'll go back to that.
I don't want to criticize. I don't want to criticize the sport, because that would be too easy. My role in when I'm on television is to analyze, is to tell you what a fighter is doing good, what he's doing bad, how he should be fighting. Do I think what he said in the paper was good, bad, or indifferent? Do I think that the other guy did the right thing in what he did? That's more my role in boxing, is analyzing it that way, because I don't want to criticize the sport that feeds me, because it does feed me. It's not a perfect sport. It certainly has its flaws, and the business of it can be at times ugly at best. But it is what it is, and we have to make the best of it. And you hope that I hope to try to go through my career with doing it as fair and as honest as I can. But it's tough to do it in this world of boxing that we live in. And I think a perfect example, like I said, was the Malik Scott fight with Chisora.
So what were your thoughts on... I spoke to Malik afterwards. A lot of people think Malik took a dive. Some people say
that's ridiculous.
I know. Some people say the referee was a dodgy referee. It was a Frank Warren special. What do you think?
Well, you see, saying that, has I mean, I can't say it was, because that would be being accusatory without having fact.
Okay.
It's certainly what I felt after the fight, but that's my emotions talking. Now, I think that, in my opinion, that referee was ready to wave that fight off. His next move, regardless at what number Malik was going to get up, it was already in his mind that his next move was he's crossing his arms. Yeah. It didn't matter. That was the deal, okay? And I think what kind of screwed him up with his thinking was Malik getting up at the last second. Now he didn't know what to do, if he should wave it off, which he did, because that's what he was going to do if he got up at 7. He was going to do the same thing. But the mistake he made was saying he didn't beat the count. And that was his mistake. He didn't say he was unable to continue. He said he didn't beat the count. And clearly, he never says the word 10. And in the BBB of C rules 4.3 says the referee must count 10 and out. And he must indicate it with his hands that he counts 10. So that's what the problem was. He never said 10. Therefore, Malik beat the count. So he didn't examine him. He didn't say step forward. He didn't make any kind of an attempt to say, he didn't ask him a question. He didn't say, are you okay? He said he didn't beat the count, and that's where he was wrong. So in essence, he erred greatly. And in my opinion, that fight should at best be declared a technical draw or ordered an immediate rematch.
Do you think it's going to happen?
Again, that's the business of boxing. I don't know. It's so difficult. And I have to say that I know all the incidents and stuff in the past that have happened with Chisora, but to be honest with you, the whole week of the fight and the whole time we were there, the Chisora camp and his team, Don Charles, his trainer, could not have been more professional and in the manner in which they conducted themselves. And I know that had nothing to do with them, with what the referee did in the ring. But the referee made a crucial mistake. Everyone makes mistakes, but when you say everyone makes a mistake, you have to at least be accountable for the mistake that you've made. And if you are accountable for it, then it should be so. I made a mistake, and that fight should not be declared a KO victory for Derek Chisora.
Some would say, well, no, okay, Malik fought Derek Chisora. That was his best fight in the 35 fights he'd had, and so therefore now he came unstuck, and that's what happened. That's what a lot of people will say now.
But I'm sorry, explain, Ingram. I'm not sure.
In terms of Malik fighting Chisora, Chisora was his best opponent. Because in terms of the CV, although Chisora hadn't beaten anybody at world level, had come close, they say he beat Helenius, fair enough. But everybody else, he had either got knocked out by Haye, got beat by a Klitschko, but he was just a tough guy who'd taken those guys the limit.
Gatekeeper.
A gatekeeper, yes. So
no problem.
Malik Scott, now, it was his time to either show that he was a step above or that Derek Chisora was a better fighter than him. Because up to that fight and the Glasgow fight, the guys that Malik Scott had fought, and this is a media or I think the fans would say, is that his opponents weren't good enough or referred to as bums. So now he fights Chisora, and people think, well, okay, Chisora knocked him over. And these are not boxing fans now. These are people who just see a fight. Malik went down. Oh, well, he fought a load of bums anyway. What is your take on this and this use of the word bums?
Are you ready for this now? Because
I am. I can't wait to hear your response.
See, first of all these, the one thing that the sport of boxing creates, especially among the fans, and what social media and the internet has created, is a bunch of vultures, but vultures who are cowards, vultures who hide behind the keyboard using false names and write derogatory things about fighters when they themselves have achieved nothing in their life. And it's so easy to turn around and criticize guys as being bums. But let's face facts. Nobody in any sport fights or plays against the best from day one. You always build up. So the 32 guys that Malik beat, were they all world contenders? Of course they were not. And there's not a fighter in history that his entire record is filled with guys who are only world contenders. That doesn't happen. That's a fallacy. So people who say that, I don't even have the time of day for, because they have no idea what they're talking about.
I'm glad you've said this, but keep going.
It's so easy to sit behind your keyboard and say, yeah, he wasn't good. What's even worse is the people who are trying to justify what happened in that fight by saying, he should have got up. He should have got up a second earlier. Why did he stay down? Oh, he quit. Okay, you have no idea what you're talking about. Let's just go on the facts. And the facts are that you have 10 seconds to regain your feet. And he regained it in 10 seconds. Simple as that. There should be no other argument. There's no other discussion as to whether Derek was going to knock him out anyways. Okay, great. Malik was ahead on points. Derek was going to do this. Great, no problem. All that is hearsay. All that is maybe. The fact remains is the rule says you have 10 seconds to regain your feet. He regained his feet inside of the 10 seconds without even the luxury of the examination from the referee, who would wipe off your gloves, ask you to put your hands up, ask you to take a step forward, as is tradition anywhere on the planet Earth. So anybody who disagrees with that is only doing it out of hatred, is only doing it out of spite. They're not doing it logically. Their argument is not logic. Their argument is not fair. Their argument is not to sit back and say, what do you think? Should it have been stopped? And make the argument as such. And I debated this very same thing time and time again in the fight between Lucian Bute and Liberato Andrade.
Yes.
Where Bute gets dropped, with seconds remaining. And at the time, I had my TV show on TSN at the time, and we recapped it and broke it down and everything. And the fact is, you cannot be saved by the bell in any round. The bell did not sound. However, there was 5 seconds left to go in the round. He clearly beats the count and is on his feet at the time the round is, for all intent and purposes, over. He doesn't have to be in shape to continue at that point. He's on his feet when the round is over. Now, I know that that's a technicality, but that's the clarity and the facts of the rule. It didn't happen at the 2-minute and 30-second mark. It didn't happen at 2:45. It happened at 2:55. And he was up by time the 5 seconds were over, and he was on his feet, and that round was now over. Technically speaking, yes, saved by the bell. So, I don't turn around and say, Bute's a bum, Andrade's a bum. That's has nothing to do with me. And I'm trying to defend, boxing. I'm trying to defend. So the vultures who float and who circle and circle and circle, and they just wait for the first moment for somebody to trip up, as is the case that happened with Malik, which wasn't even his fault. And all of a sudden, that 32-0 record, former member of the U.S. national team, a guy who lives clean, doesn't cause any problems, doesn't bother anybody, fights, does the best he can, never says a derogatory word about him. All of a sudden, the vultures come down. Where were you guys before? You were nowhere because you didn't have anything to eat. You didn't have dead carcass that you wanted. Now you found somebody, so now you figure, here's a guy who's now down and out. Let's kick him and step on him more, because that's the only courage that you have, is to step and kick on somebody who can't defend themselves, or who's now been hurt, or who has been knocked out. It's so easy to criticize those people. But before, you couldn't say anything because you guys were nobodies before, and you still are, and you hide behind a keyboard. And those are the guys that bother me a lot, Ingram.
I'm so glad. You don't know how much I'm so glad you're saying this, because believe me, I get it all the time on my YouTube channel. Oh, that guy's a bum. This guy's a bum. That guy's a bum. He ain't fought nobody. It's a common thread, and the more people in public people speak out on things like this, the better. Yeah. Because it needs to be known. We need to squash this sort of stuff. This person's a bum and that person's a bum. But
the only time I will allow someone to use that kind of terminology, or allow to criticize in that manner, is when it's a former fighter who's talking and he's in the game and he knows what he's saying, and he says something that this guy, okay, I'll pay attention, But your regular forum contributors and stuff like that, forget about it. You haven't done anything. You sit and you steal internet feeds of fights because you don't want to pay for them, and then you're the first one to criticize what happens, and you call people bums, and you've done nothing in your life, and you have no success, because you know what? Not everybody in every walk of life is going to be the best. No. But the person, like the person who runs the corner store, he works hard and he does his business and he pays his taxes and he lives as good as he can live and he's not in trouble with the law. Doesn't mean that he has to be, a worldwide conglomerate and own every grocery store on the face of the earth. Not everybody is going to be that. So have some respect for people who ply their trade, whether it's in 4-rounders or 6-rounders or 8 or 10s or 12s. Have some respect for what they do and respect what they do. And there's not a fighter on earth, that is not prepared to lose and accept the defeat. But when victory or defeat is taken from him and he is robbed and wronged by wrongdoing, ineptness, corruption, name it what you want, that's when fighters get upset. That's when I get upset, because no one wants to lose. No one wants to have their grocery store robbed. If they go out of business because they didn't do what they could do best, if they didn't sell what they should sell, then that's their own fault. But don't rob me and don't steal from me. And that's the thing that I hate most in boxing. And that's what happened to Malik Scott. If Malik Scott was going to get knocked out, he'd have been the first one to congratulate Derek Chisora. And I would have gone over and congratulated Chisora and Don Charles as well on having fought a great fight and having beaten an undefeated heavyweight, which not too many guys accept to fight undefeated heavyweights. And Chisora did. And, I would have shaken his hand. But for the referee to do what he did and to play with somebody's livelihood, somebody's future, somebody's reputation, and allow that person's family to be exposed to the attacks of the vultures and the crooked people and the cowards who hide behind their keyboards because you as a referee made an inept mistake or whatever it is that you did. You stopped that fight for no reason. That's not fair and that's not right.
I take it that you'll be sending the referee a Christmas card this year.
He's on the list.
Okay, let's flip things on its head a little bit, and let's talk about 3 upcoming fights. Fight number 1, the super fight, the one, Mayweather Canelo. I'll give you a personal take on it. I just think that
you shouldn't give me your personal take. You shouldn't give me your personal take until I tell you mine, because I don't want you to think I took your idea.
Okay, you go first then. You go first.
As far as I'm concerned, as great a prospect as Canelo is, and as great a marketing job that they've done with him, he's proven to be a very skillful and talented fighter. Actually, his fight against Austin Trout, while I think I called the fight a draw, if I'm not mistaken, I don't remember, that was his best performance. He fought a credible guy and beat a very, very good guy. It was a very close fight. You could have given him the win, no problem. It was very close. I don't think it was what the judges had it.
No way.
It was nowhere near what they scored it. I scored a very close fight. if you want to call it 7-5 for Canelo, you can, no problem. You can probably even call it 6-6 and give the extra point because of the knockdown to Canelo. Canelo has emerged as a real top-flight, world-class fighter. But I think that Mayweather is still the man, and until proven otherwise, I'm not picking anybody against Mayweather except Mayweather. And Floyd is as good a fighter as I've seen in my lifetime, and he could have been in there with any great fighter of any era that I've seen. And the thing that I admire about him most is that not only, like, he talks his stuff and does his thing, but he is a throwback in terms of how hard he trains, and I respect that in him. So my pick is Mayweather.
I'm going to say exactly the same thing, and there's a lot of reasons why I say. First of all, I look at Canelo's work rate. He's one that fights in spurts. I think Mayweather will be keeping him busy, and when he stops, Mayweather will hit him. I can see him getting hit with that straight right hand all the time. I think the other thing is his footwork. I don't think Canelo's the fastest on his feet, and I think you need good movement. The other thing is I don't think Canelo's jab. I think to beat what Mayweather, you need a very good left jab, and I don't think that Canelo's got a good enough left jab to keep Mayweather off balance for me. I think De La Hoya had the tools to actually beat Mayweather. He had the good long left jab. He had the combination punches, but De La Hoya's stamina in fights down the stretch has always let him down, in the Trinidad fight, in the Mosley fight. And so when I look at this fight with Canelo, I just see inexperience. He's experienced, he's beaten one world champion. I mean, when you talk about real experience, you put it down on paper. Who has he come anywhere close to fighting someone like Mayweather? Well, Mayweather, seeing a Canelo, guys that come forward, he's used to that.
Yeah, I think the guys who have had the most success with Mayweather, and more recently, the guy who had the most success was probably Cotto. And, Canelo does have that similar ability to be able to put that kind of pressure on, be able to take a punch and throw back and not back away the first time he's hit, and almost like that, the old saying, be able to take two to give one. Sometimes you have to put yourself in that kind of a situation with Mayweather, and it takes a special kind of person to be able to do that. We're going to find out if Canelo's got it, but I certainly think it's a fight that certainly creates interest, and that's what it's done. And if there, besides, I guess, the Pacquiao fight, which part of that died with my man Marquez's right hand, but I think it might be the best fight you could make right now. To me, it's the most compelling matchup that Floyd can make for himself.
Okay, let's move on. I'm going to talk to a fight that's happening in the UK, causing a massive stir. Tyson Fury, David Haye. That's huge, and I follow boxing, and I know David Haye from his days as an amateur. I was in the UK when he was on the British team and got thrown off the team at the Commonwealth Games. I was there for that. I know David Haye well. I know Tyson Fury well also. I know his management very well. I watched him make his pro debut in the UK, so I know of him. I know where he's been. David Haye is a gifted fighter. He's always been a very talented guy. There's no doubt about this. And for a while, he might have been the king of the trash talkers in the heavyweight division, but I think he's been overtaken now by Tyson Fury. He may have met his match, so he has to focus just on the fight, concede the trash talking to Tyson, and just concentrate on the fight. I think one thing that we've seen in Tyson Fury is you've got to give him credit in terms of the grit that he has shown. Every time I've watched him fight, whether it was against Nevin Padgett, the Canadian, or against Cunningham, he's picked himself off the floor and he's come back and he showed heart and grit and was allowed to fight back. Contrary to, of course, Malik, who was not allowed to fight back. Even though it was same knockdown, right? No, we couldn't. We didn't stop Tyson, but we could stop Malik. But the kid has shown a lot of grit and has been allowed to fight back. And I think if David does, and David's a good puncher, and he could drop Tyson early in the fight.
And if Tyson is allowed to fight himself back into the fight, if David doesn't get him out of there and Tyson fights himself back into the fight, it could be a very, very interesting fight. So I think it's a compelling matchup. I think it's a great matchup, and I think it's going to be exciting. I think, although I'm not a fan of all that stuff that they do before a fight, sometimes I think that fighters take it to a level where, they're not even professional anymore. And you're saying, are you serious? It's become wrestling status, and I hate that stuff. I think it's almost exaggerated now to the point where even 4-round preliminary kids are going into stare-offs with each other and trying to bump chests and bump heads with each other, like it's ridiculous. No one cares, but this is for their own ego. And I think this is going to be a very, very interesting contest between two guys that at least are fighting each other, for dominance in the UK before worrying about world title supremacy.
I notice you haven't made a prediction.
Yeah, well, the prediction I just made would be that David could knock him down, and if he allows Tyson to get back into the fight, could be very dangerous. I'm not sure. I'm going to need to think about it a little bit more, because probably if you asked me, how do I think Tyson could win, I could probably make an argument for that, and I could also make an argument for how David Haye could win. I really can. I can make an argument on both sides. So I'm not really sure yet who I'm going to pick. I'm going to wait till I get a little closer to the fight.
Okay. Another fight's been announced. Carl Froch, George Groves.
I don't know too much about George Groves, but I do know a very lot about Carl Froch.
Trained in Canada, I believe, a few times.
Yeah, well, I was there when I was in Jean Pascal's corner when he and Carl fought for Britain's Fight of the Year. I was in the UK when he beat Luchan Bute. I've seen him fight all the fights in the Super 6. I think Carl Froch has emerged as one of the greatest super middleweights in boxing history, and he's done some, arguably one of the greatest in British history, without a doubt. I think he's done some outstanding things. I think he's a person who conducts himself with class, and he fights hard, and he backs up what he says, and he doesn't ask for a quarter. He doesn't give any. I just like everything about him, and I think he's very underrated in his skills and what he's done. I think he has a great team with Robert McCracken. I think McCracken's and I know Robert very well also, and I think, a great trainer, and I don't think he's given enough credit for the work that he's done with Carl Froch. I'll tell you a little story. I was fortunate enough to have dinner with Carl and Robert McCracken when they were here in Canada preparing for the Jermaine Taylor fight, and this was when the start of the Super 6 happened, and we were talking, and I asked at that time, I said, out of all the guys, Robert, who would you like Carl to fight most? And he, without hesitation, he said Luchan Bute, and he said it would be easy. He said Carl eats up left-handers, no problem. And he answered that instantaneously. And sure enough, a few years later, he proved to be so right in the manner in which he dismantled Luchan Bute. I have a lot of respect for Robert McCracken as a fighter, as a trainer. I think he's a great mind in Carl Froch's corner, and Carl Froch responds to him, and they've done a great, great job with him. So unfortunately, I don't know enough about George Groves to be able to say what I think about him. So when I don't know, I say I don't know. So in this case, I got to go with Froch only because I know Froch.
Okay, then I have to ask the question then. Joe Calzaghe, Carl Froch, who would have won?
It's a good question. It's a great question. Look, it's hard to argue with the 48 or 49-0 that Calzaghe had. He certainly did what he was supposed to do. However, I will say this. Carl Froch did something that Calzaghe never did, and that was venture overseas and take on guys in their own backyard and fight them, and not in the confines and comforts of their own home. Calzaghe did it in his last two fights, against an aged Roy Jones and a controversial win over Bernard Hopkins. So, I know it's strictly hypothetical, but, in terms of what you set out to do, I think Carl Froch has done it, and he's risked it and put it on the table and pushed all the chips in and gone all in, where Joe Calzaghe did not. And the one thing that always troubled me about Calzaghe, and now the name escapes me, but he fought a very close fight and won a decision over somebody, and the name escapes me now, and then never gave him a rematch. And that bothered me, and that bothered me that he did that.
Robin Reed.
That's right. That's right.
I remember Robin Reed. I thought Robin Reed beat him that night.
A lot of people do, and he never fought him again, and that bothers me. Yet there are guys on his record that he knocked out and gave
rematch. Was it Togwell? That tall guy. I think he's German.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Sparked him in a round and came back and fought him 9 rounds after that.
Yeah. So I like Carl Froch, and I know him personally as well. So obviously I could be somewhat biased in what I say, but I like Carl Froch. I like what he's done, and I've got a lot of respect for him. Like I said, though, you can't take away what Calzaghe did.
I have to come close to home. Adonis Stevenson.
Yep.
He's fighting Tony Bellew.
They're not fighting yet, are they?
That's what I hear. It's in November.
Oh, well, yeah, but doesn't Adonis fight Tavoris Cloud first?
I thought that Bellew fought him first in November. It's November. Well, okay. That's something new.
I thought there was a fight date scheduled for September for Adonis to fight Tavoris Cloud. Now, unless that's changed, I've been away all week, so I haven't heard. So, I mean, unless that's changed, that's what I thought. And I heard that the WBC had allowed Adonis to make an optional defense of the title before facing Bellew in the mandatory.
Right. So who wins?
Oh. I trained Adonis Stevenson for 2 years as an amateur.
Right.
And I will tell you this. He is without a doubt, in my opinion, and this is like, I'm not even going to say this opinion, this is fact. He is the hardest puncher, pound for pound, in boxing today.
Harder than David Haye?
Harder than David Haye. He is the hardest punching fighter in boxing today. Single, punch for punch. He is the hardest punching fighter in boxing today. And I'm telling you that. If I tell you that, that's a huge statement.
Okay. I'm not gonna argue with you.
I mean, you can, but I'm telling you, I felt it. I felt it, and I know what he can do, and I've known Adonis for maybe 13 years now, maybe a little bit more, and he is devastating. The damage I've seen him do is debilitating. And when people refer to him as having power, I say power. It's nuclear power. It's not just power.
But I want to go back to this because, yes, I know he knocked out Chad Dawson, but I heard rumors and reports that before Bellew fought Miranda knocked Chad Dawson out in sparring, knocked him out cold in sparring. Then he went and fought Andre Ward, and Andre Ward beat him up. And he was weight trained then, and then he's gone and fought Adonis Stevenson. Was he finished before he even got in the ring against Stevenson?
No, that's a tough thing to say, but I don't know that made a difference, because you could be finished, and it shows up in round 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, where you just don't have it anymore and you're getting beaten up. I don't think you can determine being finished after getting hit with a single punch, which didn't even land on the chin. And, you can just tell by the look in poor Chad's eyes when he got dropped that he just got hit with something he had never even felt before. And he said it after the fight, I got caught. I never saw it. And I just was, I saw what Adonis was doing. I saw what he was doing, and I was at the fight. We were in the dressing room because we had a fighter who fought earlier. So we were still in the dressing room, and we were watching the fight on TV. And I was sitting with my friend, who's Jean Pascal's trainer, and we're watching the fight. And as the fight started, I turned to my friend and I said, "Why is Dawson circling to his right? Why is he walking into Adonis's left hand? Adonis is gonna line him up for that." And as I said it, boom, he lands the shot, and my friend punched me when I said it. You know what I'm saying? He said, "How'd you know?" I said, "Like, I just saw it. I know what Adonis is going to try to do. But you don't have to take my word for it. Talk to Donovan George and ask him if he's been hit harder in his life by anybody than Adonis Stevenson. I had Adonis when he fought Edwin Rodriguez, who's a great friend of mine. And, I have all the respect in the world for Edwin. But, I had him when he fought Edwin as an amateur. It's the only time Edwin's ever been off his feet was against Adonis Stevenson. I'm telling you for a fact, this guy is a debilitating puncher. Now, I'm not saying he's technically correct all the time. I'm not saying he doesn't have technical flaws. I'm just talking pure, power. Almost like a George Foreman type power. Like even when it's wrong, it hurts.
When you've got power like that, I would put that legendary power, like sort of like Julian Jackson. When he hit you, right. You stayed hit.
Yeah, that's correct.
But that's how I determine a puncher. When he hits you, you ain't getting up. There are guys who've got knockout power, or he's got knockout power. He throws like 10 punches and knocks you down. And these other guys hit you, bang, one shot, and that's it.
Yeah, Adonis is like George Foreman. That's who I make that correlation to George Foreman. That's the kind of power he's got.
Wow.
And I'm not kidding you when I tell you that. And I have no reason to tell you that. And not because he's Canadian. I don't train him. I don't manage him. I don't work his corner. I'm not his promoter. Nothing. I have no affiliation. I have no reason to have to tell you that. I'm just giving you my opinion. And I'm telling you, he's devastating when it comes to power punching.
How do you think you'd go against Cloud?
I like the matchup. I think it bodes well for Adonis Stevenson. I think it's a good matchup for him. I think styles make fights. And I think the type of guy that's going to give Adonis trouble is somebody who's going to have the resiliency of a Donovan George, someone who's going to have that kind of courage and that kind of ability to absorb punches and also have great skills in being able to punch back and and throw combinations and answer back and retaliate against that nuclear power. If you're not going to be able to withstand that, you're going to be in big trouble.
Wow, that's not good signs for Tony Bellew then.
That's going to be very dangerous for Tony. And I think, if he thought that, if he got shook by Chilemba, he has no idea what it's going to be like to get hit by Adonis Stevenson.
How many rounds do you think that fight would go if it's made?
Yeah, I don't like to do this because, I have a lot of respect for Tony. He beat Chilemba, a guy that I work with. I didn't think he won the first fight, and I wasn't there, sadly, for the second fight because that was made on the same day as Butte and Pascal was supposed to be fighting, and that was made after the fact. So I couldn't be there for that. But I think if you're making that kind of a comparison, this Bellew has to be very, very careful for that power. Now Bellew's got a style where he might be able to try to outbox Adonis, and he's going to have to try to do that because if he's going to go punch for punch with him, I can't see him coming out on top in that exchange.
Wow. Russ, thank you so much for giving us your time and talking. It's so much experience. How do boxing fans get in touch with you, first and foremost, before we finish?
Well, I am on Twitter, so you can certainly find me on Twitter. It's simple, at Russ Anber. That's very easily. And you can get in touch with me through my website at rivalboxing.com. So either one of those, I'm sure you'll be able to find me. Not a problem.
And one final thing, let's talk about...
You found me.
Well, I found you, yes.
Yeah.
and one final thing, let's talk about very quickly the DVDs, because they're excellent. I've watched some of them before. Excellent stuff, so...
Thank you, Ingram. As a matter of fact, we're coming out with another one. It should be released shortly, so hopefully for the new season starting in September, I'll have a second edition of another Russ Anber DVD. And so there's the ones that I've done for Title Boxing back in the day, which I know you know, and then I've got ones that I've done for Rival. So this will be my second one coming out for Rival. It'll be out in September, and there's some really neat stuff in there and some really good stuff. I hope you'll like it. I'm looking forward to hearing the feedback, and it always makes me feel good when people like you say, "Oh, you're the guy that did those tapes. Oh, hey, you have no idea how much you helped me." That's really nice. It was nice to hear. When I was in London, actually, walked into a gym and a guy thanked me for saying how much I had helped his career and getting coached through my videotape. So that was kind of fun.
I appreciate. Russ, thank you so much for talking to Bayloric TV.
My pleasure. Please send me the link where I'll be able to send this out on Twitter, okay?
Absolutely, no problems.
Cheers, mate. Thank you
Take
very